Larger casters, as she mentioned to me earlier, on area rugs, they don't work that great. On tile, they're excellent. I don't have a big problem with it on actual laid, tacked down rug, but keep that in mind. Don't try and run it over an area rug. You might catch the wheel on it.
Yeah.
When you want it to stay in place, the casters do a pretty good job at holding it down. It won't move very easily in that situation, so if you have little ones running around who might go running into it, it'd be a lot safer if you left the casters locked in position. The board is height adjustable, as you have probably noticed. If your board seems to sink to the bottom or float to the top, no matter where you position it, please make it thicket. We are paying a company to install these correctly, mostly so we can ensure they're done consistently, but also to accept, basically to remove the district from liability in case it ever falls off. We know it was professionally done by someone who's experienced and who did not miss any steps, but we were having a few issues in the beginning when we were deploying these where they weren't tensioned correctly. The board should be able to go anywhere from its bottommost position where it's comfortable even for a kindergartner, all the way up to a senior and basketball team without having to hunch over. So you can feel free to adjust it how and whenever you want. If you're just displaying things, all the way up might be the best position for you. If you're letting the kids interact with it, lower it down all the way. One thing you'll want to keep in mind when you're pulling it around a room, I lock the caster so it's not going anywhere, the board will still raise and lower while you're pulling. Keep that in mind. You don't want to accidentally raise it too high as you're coming through a doorway and then whack the corner on the door, on the header of the door. Accessories. It comes with two. Both of them are magnetic. Only the sides of the board are magnetic. It comes with a remote and 2 pens. I'll get into exactly how these work in a minute, but I want to talk about the magnets for a minute. Very often I see in classrooms, and I would expect it to be similar in libraries, you generally don't want the kids to be able to just take these whenever you want. Again, magnetic. You can take them off the board, keep them in a desk drawer. Heck, if you want to, stick them on something magnetic like that laptop card. And you know what, Tommy? I just realized I'm not even recording on my phone.
That's fine.
Yeah, just go with it.
Because I got the laptop and the phone.
Okay. So you guys can actually put these anywhere. They're not required. The actual remote itself does not do anything. The on-screen buttons can't. If you want to use the remote, one thing you have to keep in mind, it's not like a super modern remote where you can point it anywhere in the room. It doesn't work over Wi-Fi. This one is an infrared remote. You have to point it at the little sensor in the lower left. You can probably see it if you look very close. Otherwise, when you push the buttons, they just won't do anything. Now the pens, these are nothing special. All they are is little plastic housings with steel tubes in them. I mention that because occasionally, if a kid drops these or yanks on them real hard, they'll rip the plastic housing open and you'll see the steel tube inside. Not a big deal, they can be glued back shut, or you could actually replace them with anything. There's no battery in here, nothing special at all. This board works purely on detecting whether or not something is coming in contact with it. The pen is only here for 2 purposes: to give you a more writing realistic feeling if you were going to be drawing more handwriting on the board, and to keep little fingerprints off of the board. These are very easy to clean and sanitize. The board is not. Getting into that, definitely don't use a solvent on the screen, but I actually don't recommend at the moment doing any kind of cleaning. We're going to come up with a procedure for that for you. If you feel the need to clean it anyways, and I know some of you will if you're that germophobic or OCD like I am, please do not don't go ham on the solution or whatever liquid you're using. If the sponge or paper towel or whatever you're using is too wet, the water will drip down. And on the bottom of this board is a row of infrared cameras. If they get wet, they might stop working, and all of a sudden your board is going to stop behaving normally. So if you're going to clean the board and not have the tech do it at some point, be very careful not to let the water condense and start dripping down. Otherwise, we're going to have a very, very, very big problem when it comes to getting it fixed.
So what do you recommend? Is it like a soft cloth? That'd
be good. I would recommend not even letting the kids touch it. Use the pen, wipe the pens off, disinfect them if you're worried about germs. Hit it with a Lysol wipe before you get between classes, something like that. Pens are the best way to do it. If you really want to let the kids use the board, something extremely mild. So, I mean, do you know exactly what the screens are rated for?
We can use the green wipes we gave to the techs.
For the Chromebooks?
Mm-hmm.
Those are a little wet, though.
Yeah, they could. I mean, they work.
They work, alright.
Yeah.
Are you supposed to have pens?
It'll come with them,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Oh, all right.
And the remote.
Oh, okay.
What about like when you your TV? I have like a soft cloth. Oh, there you go.
Like that.
I just unscrewed it, apparently. Sorry, a soft cloth.
Yeah, you know when you clean your
Like the
TV,
microfiber.
That would
it's
be
not
fine.
wet.
Yeah, as
Yeah,
long as
no.
it's only very,
Or like
very
your
light.
eyeglass,
Not wet at all.
you know,
That would
those like
probably be fine.
lens corrector. I don't know. I let mine. I'm not touching
Yeah, I mean,
I got
honestly,
fingerprints off mine with the soft.
with the soft
Dry.
cloth.
Dry.
yeah, dry would be
Yeah.
great. You don't have to worry about it then. And since it's soft, it won't scratch. the
Yeah,
board.
microphone.
I don't recommend anything dirty or something you've used on another surface because there's a very good chance that it'll have little bits of dirt which will very faintly scratch the screen over time. Questions before we move on to connecting
If your pixels aren't right, you report that to your tech.
it? Oh, yes, please. They're still
Okay.
under warranty and I
Yeah.
would love to get them replaced before they go out of warranty.
Because they already, when they came and did a quick one at our school and the pixels weren't aligned, but we're the school that they took it up the 3 flights of stairs.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
3 flights of stairs?
2 flights,
Oh, okay.
whatever, depends on which side
Yeah,
of
I've
the
heard
building you go
about
up.
that.
Yeah.
No comment.
Okay, all right.
The two on the ends, the protectors, did that come with those?
No,
or-
actually, I have no idea where she got them.
Oh,
And
you got those.
Our second grade teacher, who was also like our
Yeah.
tech, person,
Your
not
tech
our
coach.
level 1 tech, but yeah, so she's got them in her classroom so that kids,
yeah,
Yeah.
they don't get hurt. Yeah.
Our special ed people put cool notes on the bottom.
so they
Oh,
must
that's
make them
cool.
for that.
And I'm the one that fell the day
Yeah,
of the first
no worries.
training and ended up in the hospital.
Oh,
I
wow.
tripped over the plates. And I got 23 stitches in
I'm sorry to hear
Yeah.
that.
it. So watch your proximate, like,
Yeah.
because I have a depth perception problem anyway, and I'm now, well, I got to come back, so.
Oh, that's good.
So they don't
But just be careful.
They just, they're
No,
always on.
they have to be on stands. We actually did choose a stand with as short of a leg as we could without risking tipping over. That's one of the criteria we have in picking them out. Apparently not short enough,
I don't even know where
but
she
no, generally we don't wall mount them. So there's a few reasons. Plant operations doesn't like to do that because in many of our buildings, there's asbestos or other things in the walls that they don't want to go drilling through. They have other reasons too. They generally, any board we mount ends up getting moved within at least 3 years of when it's mounted. And these boards are a lot heavier than the smart boards that we used to move around all the time between classrooms. They are very expensive to have a contractor come out, and at this weight, it would be ludicrously expensive in my opinion. Plant Ops doesn't seem interested in doing them. Even though they come with a wall mount, it is all the way up to Jeff King. He has given an edict, we are not wall mounting unless it is absolutely necessary. So I think one classroom in the entire district has gotten a wall mount for this.
We're gonna have something, because it is, I don't know, it's pretty.
And even that was an accident,
Yeah.
a miscommunication.
Yep. Yeah, that probably wouldn't have been done even under its normal circumstances. All right, moving on to connecting. This is the part where I'm going to do everything twice. Tommy, if you want to go ahead and start recording.
I got an idea.
That's good.
Go ahead and clap. Just one.
Good. So sync up our audio later. Okay, moving on to connecting the board. I think I still have my screenshot here. So there's 2 keyboard keys that you'll use to connect it. Quick show of hands, how many of you actually have a board in your room right now? Okay, not quite all of you. Have you already had your laptops connected, those of you who have it there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't, or if for whatever reason yours is not anymore, we have to re-image your laptop or something along those lines. Pairing the board, at the moment, there's a bug in Windows that Microsoft accidentally pushed out via an update and they haven't bothered to fix. So initial pairing, I honestly just say let your tech do it for you. It's not that it's hard, it's just that to give written instructions and ask everyone to follow them. It's beyond their job description. Just let the tech do it for you. After they are initially paired, there are two keyboard keys you care about. This Microsoft symbol here, that's usually only in the lower left, but sometimes can also be found on the right-hand side, and the letter K. K is for wireless. That is a joke. I have no idea why they chose K for this. Other than P for projector was actually already being used for something else. In a moment here, we're going to go through the actual connection process on the tablet I have over there. But any questions before we move on? Did everybody get a quick? You can take a picture on your phone if you want. Figured at least somebody would jump on that. We're going to do this one more time before we move on. So don't feel like you have to rush. Okay. All good? All right, we're going to go ahead and proceed. So on my laptop screen, when I press the Windows K button with a Microsoft K key, I will see a pop-up appear on the right-hand side of my screen. And right now it says disconnect because I am still connected to the board. When I disconnect it in a moment, you guys won't be able to see very well, so I'll just bring the tablet around. All right, we start the disconnection process. Something to note, only one computer can connect to the board at a time, and only one board can be connected to any computer at one time. So you can't use this to connect to several boards at once in case somebody asks you to. All right, let's bring this over real quick so you guys can get a better look. So again, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see it says EOA room 113. The first three letters are your school code.
Where is this?
On the right-hand side. The upper right. Your right, my left. Can you see it?
Oh,
It says EOA room 13 or 113. The first three letters are the school code for the building you're in that IS uses for just about everything. And then the room number is exactly what it sounds like. Actually, I'm going to see this up.
it's going to be different for every.
So all I do is tap on the EOA room 113. And since I've connected to it before, you'll see it says verifying security, connecting you now. And we're back. Nice and simple, right? Not that crazy.
So it's not either Microsoft K.
No, both at the same time.
Yeah, like Microsoft K,
Mhm.
and that's you.
Mhm.
And then we have to do that?
Yes.
We'll be going back over it, don't worry.
Was it the
I
one
was
with
just
doing
saying
that stuff at the time, or did you just get verified once?
You only get verified one time where it actually makes you enter a PIN, and as long as your laptop's not re-imaged or your user profile is deleted, it'll actually let you reconnect every time without a PIN. The PIN is only there to stop somebody from connecting to your board by accident. In theory, we might have one of these all over the classrooms one day, and we don't want people accidentally sending things to the wrong rooms. And in the secondary schools, we don't want kids sending things to these boards in rooms they're not in. At least with this setup, they can't kick the teacher off. But if the teacher ever left the board disconnected, they have to actually have eyes on the board to connect their laptop to it. Now, these do not work with Chromebooks. I do want to point that out in advance. Only Windows devices.
So I do have a question about that. So over the summer, when the laptops do get reconfigured, then
It would need to be repaired if yours is re-imaged. By repaired, I mean paired to the board, not physically fixed.
so it, will the PIN number be the same?
No, it changes every time a new person connects. It's meant to be random, so no one can write it down and then connect to it in another
So
room.
at the beginning of the year, is that something our tech does?
It can. You might actually be able to do it by then. I'm hoping in 6 months Microsoft will have that patched where right now, if you were to go try and pair the board, when you tap in the box to go enter the PIN number, it disappears from the computer. Normally it won't do that, and anyone who walks up to the computer would probably see, oh, there's a PIN on the board and it's asking for a PIN on the laptop, type in the number and you're good to go. The only reason we're having the techs do it now is because there's a glitch in the graphical interface that hides the number box, and most people won't be able to find it.
So don't be surprised if you can't fall or take it back if
Correct. If it's re-imaged, you'll need to do that again. I would actually go so far as to say, I don't know how they do it in every building. At ESC, when we collect laptops, if they need software installed, we usually have them write it down for us when we collect a laptop to be re-imaged. If we collect your laptops this year, I don't think we will, but that's like way above my pay grade. We didn't last year. The only reason we did last year was to swap them out. But if you had to have yours re-imaged, let your tech know to have it paired back to the board before they give it back to you. It only takes a minute. Okay. You guys want me to go through the rest of the touch interface before we double back, or do you want me to double
I
back?
need you to show that.
Okay.
Because maybe that's why I couldn't reconnect.
Here, actually, I'll let you do it.
Like I connected my.
Go ahead and get disconnected. Go ahead and hold down the window.
Yeah, you're probably kind of like
Oh, actually. Now,
staying away from that thing.
And that's what popped up on my laptop.
that's
And
that.
So that's just a two-step process. Okay. All right.
Here we go. All right, one other thing I need to know. For those of you who have little children with wandering fingers who like to run up to the board and tap it when you tell them not to, if you would ever like to turn off the touch interface, or you ever find that it's off for some reason and you don't know why, there's a really good chance that this checkbox here, this is the same menu where you press the Windows and the K key, where you connect to the board for the first time. This checkbox here that says allow mouse, keyboard, touch, and pen input from this device, if it's unchecked, like if I were to tap this to uncheck it, touch goes away completely. This stops the children from using it when they're only supposed to be viewing it. Great for very, very small classes where they like to keep scooting up to it. The only downside is to get it to check the box again, you have to click it on the computer. You can probably see my mouse up there. And now we have our touch input back, hopefully. No.
It freezes sometimes.
It's not just us. It happens to Corey too.
Actually, this is probably because of the video capture device I have in the bag. Or because I pulled the cable too far. There.
I think that happened to me once I had to shut down.
We'll do some live troubleshooting. Let's just disconnect it first. Oh. Hey, Tommy, when we leave, remind me to update the board firmware. It's like 7 versions behind.
Well, that's gonna happen to all of us, right?
Yeah, but that's something that I can take care of.
What should it be?
I think
2
it's
point.
2.15.4 or 4.0.1 dot something. 4.1.0. I think that's the modern one. There we go. And our touch is back. So again, little checkbox has to be checked. I guess if that ever happens to you, then just reconnect the board. Although in our case, I'm going to blame it on old firmware on the Action Tech.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who noticed the little black bar at the top, this drives me insane and it might bother some of your children. It's really easy to get rid of. There's an icon right here that looks like a thumbtack. And learning from my last experience, there we go. Let's see if I can enlarge it.
Oh.
Oh, I made it go away. Dang it, it's too accurate. Yeah, where's my magnifying glass? I'm making this overly complicated, sorry.
Do you have to use IPEVO to do that, or can you
Yes.
just click, okay,
That is the IPEVO software that does it.
gotcha.
Oh, it doesn't catch it. Okay, sorry. So this little thumbtack right here, if you tap that or click it on your computer, that will make the bar go away when you're not using it. Let me get rid of this guy. There we go. Okay, so that is how you hide that.
Where'd you get it back?
Not that you'll ever need it, but you can swipe from the
You don't
top,
need it, okay.
or if you move your mouse up there. The bar is for settings that you guys will probably never use. I won't even bother covering it. I've never even touched 2/3 of what's in there. Okay, questions so far?
Does the computer name have to stay up there too?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, there are ways to get rid of it, but then
And it's fine, it's just when you're showing like the video, it's there, and they're like, what's that number?
it's really nice when you have to spell the help desk though.
It's
Yeah,
only there on the desktop though, should any program.
Yeah,
it's not, maybe it isn't on the.
yeah. If you open up Chrome and go to
Screen,
YouTube
that's
or something, it'll be covered up by the video.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
make it full screen, that's true.
Questions so far? Other than that one? Okay. Let's move on to the touch keyboard and the touch mouse. So in the lower right of the screen, I actually forgot to reset this from one of my other trainings. There are two icons I want to make appear and that you're going to want on your laptop. To get to them, we right-click the clock. Now you'll notice I'm using a finger. I don't have a way to right-click. The way you do that on a touch screen is you touch and hold. So normally if I just tap the screen right now, you'll see these little circles that appear where I tapped. If I were to tap and hold, that circle turns into a square. When I see that square, I know that the board has realized my finger is there long enough, and then I can do a right click. So I'm going to go ahead and do a right click on the clock. Now that I see it's a square, I'm going to let go. And the two items I'm looking for are show touch keyboard button and show touchpad button. Show touch keyboard button and show touchpad button. If you want to take your phones out and get a
You
picture
said
now.
you have
that's
show task key button
fine. Where are you seeing that?
checked. But you said show touch keyboard button. So
Those are the two we want checked. The other ones you guys don't have to worry about.
Oh,
Can you show us one more time how you got to?
Yeah, we'll be doubling back again, but just for this, hold it and helps if you don't double tap. Hold your finger in one place until the little icon around it turns into a square. When you let go, it will do a right click, and we're doing that over the clock. And
That was
then,
actually. That's what I wrote down last time, just so everybody, I needed, like, to me, that's the time. Like, I wrote down clock, and then when you go back and try
And
to
you're
do this
looking
on your,
for
and
a
I'm
clock?
looking for a clock.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no clock on my board.
well, that's why we have the video. You'll
And that's why
actually
I'm
be
here
able
for
to
the
see.
second time, I'm not gonna forget it now.
Yeah, well, it's recording us, but we're also recording the screen as well, so you'll be able to see the screen in a much larger view if you want to go back to this. So again, the two items we want are show touch keyboard button and show touchpad button. Now, unfortunately, the menu closes every time you tap them. So I'm going to go ahead and tap the first one. And now in the lower right of our screen here, and I guess for those of you who are looking on at home on the video, there's a new keyboard icon there. We're going to right click the clock again by doing a tap and hold. Let go. Now we're going to do show touchpad button. Let's see if the magnifying glass works here. Oh, that's the one. Cool. Button, magnifying glass. Not much bigger, sorry. The actual keyboard and touchpad button. This is supposed to look like the touchpad of your laptop, and the touchpad, the keyboard on a laptop. I'm assuming for most of you, it will probably look familiar. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss our magnifying glass. We're going to start with the keyboard, So when I tap the keyboard, oops, I'm in annotation mode still. When I tap the keyboard, this big giant monster appears. This is ridiculous to type on, but I'm going to show you guys the settings you need to change to make it much more usable. I always like to say it's a lot easier to type like a T-Rex than a pterodactyl when I'm describing this to people. The way to make it look normal is how I would like to describe it, or at least smaller. This keyboard settings button in the upper left is what we want. Go ahead and finish writing. I'll wait until you guys look up. Keep in mind, we are going to go through this again. We might go a little quicker because you guys have seen it once before, but you'll get a chance to see it again if you were looking down too long. So while we have the keyboard open, we tap the keyboard settings button in the far upper left, and that will give us this pop-up menu. I believe the only setting we have to change is tapping this button. Let me double check real quick before I make an idiot out of myself. Yep, that's the one. Let me put it back where it was. So the button we're looking for, we're going to tap the keyboard settings button. And in the first row, second from the right, that is the keyboard you're probably going to want. So I'm going to tap it now. And then that turns it into a floating miniaturized keyboard that you can move around the screen. The big benefit to this, aside from being much easier to type on, you can move it out of your way while you're doing something else on the board. And when you're done with it entirely, just close it with the little X. And it goes away, and then you can reopen it here. You won't have to change that setting again. Questions about the keyboard? Love when it's easy. All right, moving on to the touchpad. Icon right next to the keyboard. When I tap this, it will bring up the representation of a laptop touchpad. You can move it around by grabbing or by tapping the title bar with your finger, and then just dragging it into place wherever you need it to be on the screen. The reason you have a big touchpad on your interactive board, very often it's nice to be able to face the kids, or at least not have to stand in front of the board and walk in front of it to get all the way to the other side. When I move my finger over this touchpad, it will actually move the mouse for me. So you can reach all the way to the other end of the board. And for those of you who don't like the tapping to get around in the computer, if you don't like to have to double tap Chrome on a touchscreen, for example, I don't have Chrome on here. Where are you? I can just use the touchpad. I can either tap the touchpad or the two touchpad buttons at the bottom. I can left click. Chrome will open. And I also have the option to right click with the other button. I often tell teachers in the classroom, since it's so easy for the kids to become disengaged every time you turn your back, it's often easier to stand facing them like this than to turn around and worry about what they're doing. All right, that is the keyboard and the touchpad. That covers pretty much all of the basics of using the board. We're going to do a quick run through again. I don't know if Tommy wants to stop recording and start it back up again or not, or you're just going to clip it and pause. Okay. I don't know what the recording limit is. Have fun editing all this out, by the way. Okay, we're going to do a quick run through again, and then we're going to move on to the IPEVO Annotator software. So if you were taking notes before, feel free to just watch or update your notes if you feel like you have to. So we're going to go all the way back to reconnecting the board for the first time. If I could remember where I put my laptop, this would go a lot quicker. I'm going to go ahead and get disconnected. I actually forgot to mention that the first time, or at least very explicitly. So I'm going to hold down the Microsoft symbol, tap the K key, and either on the board or on the laptop, I can click or tap the disconnect button. You'll see it says disconnecting. The video will cut out, and then the Action Tech, which controls this wireless video bridge, will let you know it's being disconnected. I didn't mention this, but this screen right here is the default screen when it's ready for someone to connect to it. You'll know because of the actual board name being in the lower left. So if you're ever borrowing a board or using somebody else's in another building and you're curious what it's called, it's always going to be written here. Alright, so we'll go ahead and reconnect, and then just as a reminder, it's the Windows key and the key on the keyboard. Does anyone want to practice who hasn't used it before? Okay. See if I can do this without losing the keyboard. I'm going to hold down Windows, tap the K key. We get our pop-up in the right-hand side, EOA room 113, where the board is. It's been paired before, so I won't need to enter a security pin again. Go ahead and tap it. And it starts reconnecting. Okay, going back to what we were talking about in this menu before. Again, if you ever want to stop the kids from touching the screen and messing with whatever you've put up there for your presentation or activity for them, uncheck the allow mouse, keyboard touch, and pen input for this device box. Once that's unchecked, the kids can't touch the screen anymore. Or they can touch it, they just won't be able to do anything. Let's see if it freezes again. Box. Interesting. Huh. I'm guessing that's because of the older firmware, because it's happening consistently. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect and reconnect. Maybe towards the end here, when you guys are done, we'll do a firmware update and see if that goes away, because it actually worked fine when we were doing this at home, if I remember correctly. Reconnect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hide the keyboard and touchpad buttons, just so you guys can see me pull them back out. So again, we're going to right-click the clock. If you want to do that with your hands instead of your mouse over there, you do a touch and hold until your finger turns into until the outline around your finger turns into a square instead of a circle. When you do a right click on the clock, this menu will appear. And we want to tap Show Touch Keyboard button and Show Touchpad button. So I'm going to tap the Show Keyboard button. Our keyboard has just reappeared. I'm going to do the same thing again with the Show Touchpad button. Any questions so far?
Do you have to do this every time?
Nope. I only undid it just so we can do it again for those who didn't get a chance to see. That was one of the pieces of feedback I got that people really liked last time, was they got time to go back and see it again. Okay, so this is the default keyboard. Let's say your computer's re-imaged or something, or you're borrowing a laptop. Someone else is using a laptop and you want to be Superwoman. Open up the keyboard. We're going to tap the keyboard settings in the upper left. The keyboard we want to change it to so it's more simple to use is in the first row, second to the right. This little keyboard button that kind of looks like a dice now that I think about it. We tap that, and it becomes a normal size keyboard that you can move around and realistically type on without having to grow your arms an extra foot. All right, moving past the keyboard and back to the touchpad. So we tap the touchpad button. The touchpad is best suited for if you're not comfortable with an actual touch interface, like holding your finger down to right click. You can drag the cursor around wherever you need from the other side of the board, right click or left click with the buttons, or by a 2-finger tap or 1-finger tap for right and left click on the actual touch section of the touchpad. You can move the touchpad around by dragging the title bar here, the little black bar at the top. And when you're done with it, you can tap the X to close it. Any questions before we move on to the IPEVO? All right, let me just make sure my camera is still recording. Can you check that? I'm going to check the audio. And we're good. Oh, we're only 25 minutes in so far. Oh no, we didn't record the first one. Take that back. Okay, so the IPEVO Annotator software. Quick show of hands, who has that on their computer right now? Only about half of you. Okay. So your tech will help you with this. If you want to take a minute to write it down, it's spelled I, P as in Paul, E as in elephant, V as in video, O as in October. Your tech can install this. Just make a ticket for them asking for them to install the IPEVO Annotator software on your computer. I'll let you guys finish writing. You can open the IPEVO Annotator like any other software on your computer. We go down to eyes, you'll see IPEVO, the one called Annotator. When it opens, you'll see this pill-shaped icon over here. I'm starting to see how you trip now, because I actually haven't done that until you said something. Now I feel cursed.
Sorry.
This little.
I won't even utter the name because I feel definitely cursed.
Okay, so this little pill-shaped object here, that's our IPEVO software. By default, it stays in its compact form, so it's not bothering you and covering up parts of your screen. When you're ready to use it, this little drop-down arrow will expand it to the 4 major tool sections. You'll see what I mean by sections in a minute here. You guys kind of saw me using the magnifying glass earlier, but there's a bunch of other tools it comes with. We're going to start with what I'm going to call the right on your screen option, this first one in the top here, and then we're going to work our way down, both through the sub-menus and this main one. So I'm going to tap this little squiggly pen icon, and you'll notice this top button got highlighted, and all of a sudden this expanded. This expands to show you all the other tools you can get. Now, one thing I didn't intend to show you, but you may have already noticed, these little blue dots. When I was futzing around with the magnifying glass, I was accidentally drawing on the screen. When you close the annotator, or I should say, we'll say hide the annotator with this top button by tapping it again, everything you have written is hidden. So if you want to have something written before your class comes in and then reveal it to them later, that is an option. Like, for example, you had a YouTube video open, frozen to a frame, and you wanted to reveal something that you had written on the board on top of the video itself. Easy way to do it. Moving down, we have our first pen. We're actually going to combine these first two here because the first and second pen are identical. They're just 2 different colors by default, so you can easily switch between them. If we tap the pen themselves, you'll see we can have the option of changing the colors. Colors are fine and dandy. Other simple controls that we can use are the thickness of the actual pen itself. There we go. Let's make it spaghetti thin here. So instead of these big swatches I have here, we can do something more fine. My favorite feature with this, though, has to be the disappearing ink option. Like if you want to show a student how to take notes, move the actually I should probably cover that. Moving the IPEVO is easy. All you have to do is tap and hold the IPEVO logo, and you can drag it around. So my favorite option for the pen is this disappearing ink checkbox. So when I check this box, it opens up another menu underneath it saying 3 seconds, 6, 10, 20. So when I write now, you'll notice it slowly fades away based on how long I told it to wait. I'm going to move this to 6 seconds. And you'll see it slowly fade away. This is great if you have to write something up on the board that kids need to copy down, and you don't want to have to constantly come back and erase what you wrote up there. Give them 20 seconds. It's probably more than enough for most of the kids to write down what you put up here. And then just move on. This also works with any doodle you'd like to do. Let's say you're presenting a YouTube video or slideshow of some kind. You're doing something related to the book you're reading. But no, we'll get into that later. Actually, I'm jumping the gun. You can write up here. Don't have to come back with the eraser and clean up after yourselves or bother hiding the ink. It'll just go away on its own. Now, you're not always going to want to write in disappearing ink. And sometimes it's a pain to just switch between on and off with the disappearing ink. This is what your second pen would be great for. You can leave disappearing ink on for one of them. And then for the other pen, it will stay off. I probably should have been more specific. So I left it on for the first pen. Here we go. And then the second pen has it off, and it's in a different color, as you can now see. Moving down below that, we have a stamp. Down below that, we have our shapes tool. I don't know how much use you guys will get from this, but we'll briefly cover it anyways. So in this section for shapes, you have hollow and solid shapes that you can use. Drag, click, or tap and drag, and you'll be able to do basic shape outlines. Again, we're not going to focus on this too much. You guys aren't geometry teachers, but in case you decide to do something with it, know it's there. You can adjust the colors of the shapes themselves and other things like that. Below that, we have our stamp button. By default, there's only 4 icons in here. You can actually add your own pictures with a little plus sign. If you guys want, we'll come back to that in a minute. But we all know how children love emojis, so when they get something right on a quiz that you put up here, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, check mark, check mark. Get a wrong answer, you get a little X. Not necessarily the most important thing in the world, but it can be fun. All right. Down below our stamping tool is our eraser. Can you guys see okay where you're at?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just occurred to me I could be using the magnifying glass on this, but it seems to be a pain, so I'll skip it unless you might need it. We have our eraser. We generally don't want to use this unless you want to be very specific about what you're erasing, because it doesn't erase the entire thing you wrote, only the parts it hits. And going back and retracing everything you did is a pain. A much quicker way to erase everything, if you wanted to still be specific, you could increase the size of the eraser. Do something more ridiculous. Or a much more convenient option, at the very bottom here, there's a trash can. If you tap that, it throws away the entire screen. Now below our eraser, there's a picture of a mouse, or a cursor I should say, like a computer cursor. This is only here for you to quickly switch between writing and tapping or clicking. So right now I can tap on the screen just fine, but if I switch over to the pen,
Guess what time it is?
Bingo chance.
That's right, it's time for bingo! We're so excited. We didn't do bingo last week, so it was a short week. We're super excited to be doing bingo this week. I need everybody to quiet down, hold in your excitement so you can hear your winner. If your name is on letter A, it might be you. Letter A, number 2, you're the winner. Come get your prize.
it's exceptionally loud.
It's very loud in here. Unbelievably loud.
All right, we'll hopefully cut that out. So going back to the cursor here, this cursor icon is used if you want to click or tap instead of draw. So now I can actually tap on the screen like I was mentioning before. If I go back to the marker, anywhere I touch, oh, it's a little small. Let's do this. Anywhere I touch is now going to be written on. So if I wanted to, let's get you some real world examples. Let's open up Chrome and go to YouTube, for example. One of my favorite things to do with math teachers find some instructional video related to what they're learning about. Oh, no, it's Khan Academy. Full-size YouTube video. Find some sort of tutorial. And they've already done a whole bunch of work for me. I can go ahead and let them do some work up here, pause the video. Now one of the students can come up here and solve for the equation at the end. So you can write on top of any other window. If you have a PDF printout that you were handing out to the kids that they're interacting with, you can now turn it into something large while you interact with them at the same time, for example. So any worksheet they had or any book they have, you can play it up here, interact with it any way we can think of. We'll get back into creative ideas towards the end after we finish with the IPEVO software. Moving on, below the cursor button, we have our toolbox here. This is where I stole the magnifying glass from, but that's not until towards the end. The first tool in our toolbox is a ruler. It is only used as a straight edge, although I don't think you can actually use it to straighten out what you're drawing. I am honestly not sure how this would apply to you guys, but just so you're aware, in case you think of something, it is there. All right, our next tool, protractor, same apply. Oops. The same apply. Oh, it's over here. Duh. Now I have two protractors. We'll go ahead and close it with the little X here. Again, this is more of a geometry teacher thing, but it is going to be included in the same software you have. Now we're getting into things you guys are probably going to actually want to use. So you guys saw a minute ago the magnifying glass tool. We actually have one similar called the spotlight. It's the third tool down. Let me close this window because you guys can probably not even see the difference. Okay, we'll go to a new tab. Yeah, new day now. There we are. So we'll go ahead and bust out our spotlight. This puts a circle on the screen where it focuses where you want the kids to look. By default, it's 50% translucent, so the kids can still see. Sometimes you'll want that. Sometimes you only want them looking in the area you want them to. To adjust that, this little crescent moon at the bottom underneath, if you tap that, that will switch between all black and translucent gray. And not every time you're going to want a circle. If you want to change the shape to a square, it's a little rectangular button here. When I tap that, it switches to a circle, so you can switch back between squares and circles, whatever is most convenient. And the double arrows here, when you drag those, it will adjust the size. So again, double arrow here. Make it bigger or smaller as you need. Now to move it, you can drag it across the screen, but it's also really easy to just tap somewhere and it will move to wherever your finger was. And you can't tap on the screen while you're using this tool. You can only highlight information that's there. Any questions so far? I blew through the geometry tool, but I figured this one would be important for you guys.
One more time, just where you got.
Last thing to include in the spotlight tool, the last little circle is the X. That makes it go away. In the first menu, or sorry, the first item on the IPEVO menu, if we tap the little pen with the squiggly mark next to it, it expands where we can write. The geometry tools, the spotlight, and the magnifying glass, which I'm about to show off, are all in the little toolbox underneath the cursor. When we come back to this in a minute, you can take a picture if you like. Okay, moving on to the magnifying glass. Works exactly like how you'd expect. Anywhere you hold the magnifying glass is slightly enlarged. So if you have something very small you want to show off, you can do that. A tap and drag on the double arrows will let you adjust the size. And similarly to the spotlight tool, you can either drag it around the screen or you can just and similarly to the spotlight tool, you can drag it around the screen or tap to where you want it to go. I often think that's a lot easier. It's very, very confusing to have to work in an enlarged view and move it around the screen and line it up perfectly. Just tap where you want to show something off. This is great when you have a larger room and a very small object to show and you can't do a pinch to zoom like on a web page, which we'll be covering in a minute here. All right, and then for those of you who are playing artistically, let's say you make an oopsie and overwrite something or delete something, you do have an undo button here and a redo button here. All right, questions so far before we move on to the next menu item? And don't worry, we will be doubling back like we did before.
Trash empties the screen.
Full screen. So if I have anything up now? So if I hit the trash button, Oops. Helps if I actually tap it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not dots, by the way.
Oh, you know
Because
what?
you are
It's
disappearing
disappearing ink. Apparently, disappearing ink doesn't go away instantly. Good to know.
Because the dots went away right away.
Yes. Yeah. That was a learning experience. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next menu. So this first one we use for all on top of your screen, on top of the other tools and applications you have, on top of the desktop. This other one is purely a whiteboard. So if I tap this one, it whites out the entire screen, and you have all of the same drawing tools, plus a couple of others. So we still have our spotlight, our magnifying glass, protractor, ruler. We still have our eraser button, our stamping button, shapes tool, and both of our pens. The only added tool in this section is the little hand. Now you can barely see this in the lower right. Let me actually draw something so you guys can hopefully get a better view of it. It's actually left, sorry. Your left, my right. If I tap this hand symbol here, you'll notice in the lower right of the screen, there is a little rectangular box. And if I scroll my finger around, this rectangular box is now floating inside of what looks like a larger box. Have you guys ever seen a university professor where they have like 4 chalkboards and they can just slide around and throw them on rails to get them out of their way and put them up in a corner? Okay. 1 or 2 of you maybe. Essentially, this is meant to treat the whiteboard like that, where you can swipe away from something you've written and move to another quadrant, and if you need to, come back. I don't know if you guys will use that feature.
CNN uses it.
CNN does?
Election night.
Oh.
Oh boy.
All right, that is the only added drawing tool. To save on time, I'm going to skip over them until we double back. But essentially, none of these other ones have changed. They're identical to the on-screen drawing tools. All right, below the whiteboard is the seemingly useless cousin of the whiteboard, the side-by-side whiteboard. It works very similarly. The intention is to have 2 students writing at the same time. Now, unfortunately, for whatever reason, in the software itself, they put a limitation where only 1 person can be drawing on it at a time. At least the way that we have it connected, it seems to be that way. The computer supports up to 10 points of multi-touch. The board supports 10 points of multi-touch. The wireless receiver supports 10 points of multi-touch. The software supports 1. I don't understand exactly why it is that they do that unless you need a very special touch input for it. But if you were going to have 2 students side by side, they would by default at least be writing in different colors and could adapt up to the bottom. I'm sorry, what?
You could do a pros and cons list.
Yeah, you could.
Similar.
Or actually, one of my other favorite things to do when we're in a whiteboard setting. Back. Really? I'm going to clear the whiteboard. One of my favorite things to do, we'll grab our geometry tools here. Grab an ellipse. Who here remembers Venn diagrams? Man, that is just wonderfully loud. Okay, the very, very last tool that we have here, I don't know that you guys will be greatly interested in this, but I'll bring it up very quickly. We have a video and screen capture tool, so we can take a screenshot or a screen recording and save it somewhere on the computer. So if you don't want to have to do something repetitively, like train people on how to use the board, you can do a screen recording. Okay. We won't cover live broadcast because that won't actually work in district. We'll only briefly cover these tools. If you guys are actually planning on doing it, we'll spend some time separately to do it because most people don't want to get into video production at the same time.
So could you have done that and then shared it all with all of us?
Yes, except that I'm doing it a slightly different way. Behind here, you guys may have noticed this absolute mess of cabling. We have a laptop behind this board with a video capture card hooked up between the wireless receiver and the board. So it's all being recorded without having to do anything on the computer. So we would have lost a lot of the footage if we disconnected and reconnected, for example. This gives us complete fidelity for recording.
No, I was just curious of that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we could have done it for a good chunk of this training. I don't know how many of the IPEVO tools you can use while you're screen recording. Essentially, the only difference between these buttons underneath their titles is either record or take a picture of part of the screen or the whole screen. I'll just do part of the screen and see what happens. By default, it gives you this gray overlay. And I believe we do a tap and drag. Move over here so you guys can see too. This highlighted area is where it's going to record. And when I tap capture, it saves a picture for us and asks us where we'd like to save it. I'm going to click cancel for this. And if we do a video, it works similarly. Tap and drag to get the recording area. Okay. Yeah, we'll just record this. So in theory, anything I draw here, when I click the little stop button for the recording here, it asks me where to save it. I'll put it on the desktop, that's fine. If we get out of our whiteboard by tapping the whiteboard button, going back to the screen overlay, we'll minimize Chrome. Oops, gotta switch back to the cursor. I minimize Chrome. Here's our video, this file right here. Double tap. Oh, there we go. There we go. Nice little short video. All right, questions before we go back and start over with the IPEVO? No?
Oh, well, if we don't have our boards yet, when can we expect to get them?
You know off the top of your head? Get your info on hands. Celia would be the one to know, though. Yeah. We talked about it briefly at the one-to-one meetings, but I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think they set a date. I thought they were presenting to the school board next month, but I don't know how long it's going to take to get shipping or anything like that.
No, IS said, well, no, Liberty doesn't get one, they already have one. And it's like, I guess EN2 has one. I'm sure they do, but I didn't even know that.
Oh, your tech may have mixed them up and not known it's for the libraries.
So you say, just say ask Celia, because I know my techs at my school said that mine should have been there already.
I think they ordered some of the boards in advance, or for some reason the order was staggered.
Yeah, there were 10-ish schools where they needed some kind of work in the library to accommodate the board. And so that Celia is working with plan ops. And then whatever it all depends on what school are you at?
Lowry.
Okay. Let's see.
Do you want to just email them after?
It's okay, I was just curious if you guys knew.
It would be a Celia question, but both engineers are part of that 10, so it is.
Okay, I thought we only ordered like 10. I didn't realize most of them were already there. Okay.
30.
That would explain why more people were raising their hands than I thought. Okay, so questions before we start over with IPEVO. We'll go quicker this time, and then we'll actually spend some time trying to integrate some of what you guys are doing in the library. Okay. So opening the IPEVO software, it's like any other program on your computer. You'll actually find it under the letter I. So if you don't see your little floating bill on the screen somewhere, you can go down to IPEVO, tap Annotator, and it'll go ahead and pop up somewhere on your screen. I think it's usually wherever you left it. You can move the IPEVO software around by tapping and dragging the logo. By default, it stays in its miniaturized form until you actually need it. If I tap this arrow here, it will expand, and if I tap the arrow at the bottom again, it will collapse itself to stay hidden. I'm gonna go ahead and open it back up. This is the default view you're going to see when you open it for the first time. Usually it seems to remember what section you were in before. I'm going to tap the first button, which I'm henceforth naming the on-screen drawing button. This expands to all of our drawing tools. We have 2 pens here. If we tap the pen, it will select it and it'll let us write on screen. If we tap the pen again, we can do something else like change the color to red, and by default we have disappearing ink checked. So disappearing ink, when you tap or check the box, you'll get this little pop-up at the bottom which lets you adjust how long it takes for the ink to disappear. I have it set to 6 seconds right now. And then underneath that pen, we have our second pen. I generally recommend leaving disappearing ink on one pen so you can write without cleaning up after yourself. Really handy if you're writing notes and you know the kids can write quick enough. Or if you wanted to just annotate something on the board and you didn't want it to stay there, but you also don't want to have to walk back to the other side of the board to clean it up when you're done talking about it. Great to have disappearing ink on one pen but not the other. You can differentiate them by color as well. If I tap this top icon here, that one that goes blue, this is the on-screen, the drawing on-screen button here. Tap that, that will re-expand and close the menu, but anything I have written, when it's hidden, will go away. So if you want to keep something hidden from the kids before you start, that is an excellent way to keep it up in the wings until you're ready to actually show them. So if you want to annotate something that you were going to present to them on the board, let them look at it. For example, let's say you had a book quiz up here and you wanted to autofill all the answers at once. Simple way to do that, tap the button, let the text or let your writing come back. Underneath this, we have our shapes tool. It's the third icon down in our on-screen drawing. We tap it, and then again to get all of the optional shapes. So by default, I have the circle picked. Go back to the square. Tap and drag to get your shape. You can move it if you have to, and then resize with the little anchors in the corners. If I could tap them correctly, I could move them. If you make an oopsie like I just did, you can hit the back or redo button, or undo button, I should say. Underneath our shapes tool is the stamp. Tap it again, and we can choose from any of the 4 defaults. If you guys want to learn how to add stamps, we'll do that at the end. But essentially, you can download any picture from Google Images, tap the plus sign, and add it to this. I don't know how well it works for every picture, but I've added some before. So we'll pick our stamp. Smiley face is fine. Tap on screen. Anywhere we tap, gets a smiley face. All right. Below our stamping tool, we have our eraser. Again, I generally don't recommend using this. If you want to clean up your whole screen, it's incredibly tedious. The only time I ever recommend the eraser is when you want to get very specific and only clip out part of something, like the top of the smiley face, for example. And below our eraser is the cursor. This switches from drawing mode back into tapping or clicking. So both, and this applies on the computer as well. If I'm in drawing mode, anywhere that I click with the cursor is just going to write instead of actually clicking. So I need to remember to switch back to the cursor. This is going to be a big fault for you guys when you're first learning, because I was just doing it myself a second ago and forgetting to switch back. Underneath the cursor is our toolbox with the really fun stuff. Geometry tools are here. They're not really, as far as I can tell, anything you guys are interested in, so skip over them. The really fun stuff is our spotlight and our magnifying glass tool. Going back to the spotlight, we'll tap it. It's in the square view now, and it's partially translucent. If I tap the little crescent moon underneath it, it will change the background to complete black so the kids can't preview anything. So if you wanted to take them on something that would be progressive, so let's say you start them off in one section of the board where you have something drawn or written or an image, and you want to take them along a natural progressive line, you can scan it across the board so they can't get ahead of you. It's really fun if you're doing something. I know a lot of teachers will leave written notes up on the board. This is a great way to keep the kids from trying to jump ahead to another section because now they can only see the section you want to show them as you scroll down. Adjusting the size is done with the two little arrows in the corner. Tap and drag, and you can adjust the size to whatever you wish. Switching back to the circle is done with the circle button. When you tap the circle button, it's replaced with a square. Essentially, it's letting you know what tool you're switching to. And then finally, we have our little X button. The last tool in the toolbox is the last one we're going to cover in our toolbox is the magnifying glass. Works as you'd expect. Anything you hover over is partially enlarged. You can adjust the size of the magnifier with the little double arrows. Clicking and dragging is possible with it, although I strongly recommend just tapping wherever you want it to go. It's much easier to navigate that way. Moving out of the on-screen drawing tools and over to the whiteboard tools. Tap the whiteboard. Something I forgot to mention in the first round, the whiteboard actually will retain everything you have written on it. I don't remember if it survives restarts, but if you were to write up something on a whiteboard, similarly to how we could hide, let's get out of this, anything that we've written on by tapping the on-screen writing tool and then hide those. Oops. There we go, now they're hidden. We can do the same thing with the whiteboard where we can leave things written on here and then come back to it or show people for the first time. The only drawing tool different than on the whiteboard, the only new tool to the whiteboard is this hand button here. So if I tap this hand button, it lets us scroll around. For point of reference, we are the little floating red rectangle inside of the gray one in the lower left. So if you have a lot of writing to do that you want to come back to and don't want to erase, this is a great place to do it. We have the much more useless sister board of dual whiteboard writing that only allows one person at a time. Again, all the same writing tools. And then finally, we have our screen recorders, which we're largely going to skip. Questions before we start to have fun? All right. Who wants to volunteer what they're doing in their library right now with their classes?
I do have that screenshot saver and video. When we teach the kids how to use the PAC machine at the beginning of school and we're doing that presentation over and over, I feel like that would be a useful function if you could sort of save what you're, because sometimes where you're going to have them type or search is so small for them to read. I don't know, I'd have to play with it and think creatively.
Yeah, do you want to come up here and practice?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do magnifier first, and then if that's when we move on from that, I think we can actually use the magnifier and the screen recorder at the same time. We'll give it a shot.
So, can you get into Clever?
Not logged in as me because I'm logged in as a staff member.
Okay.
So we'll simulate in Chrome. We probably won't be able to use the PAC website. Oh, can you tap it first? There we go. Go ahead and open up Chrome. Do you know your PAC URL by any chance?
So here's Clever.
Yeah, they won't let you log in
There.
pages. I'm not a student registered in the school.
Okay. All right. So you don't have our PAC on any of them. But if I logged into your laptop as myself,
Okay. He's actually pulling it up right now. What school are you at?
Channing.
I'm sure they have a bundled in Zen. You could probably just steal the URL from there. Just email it to me.
So did you know that you can get to your library page from Clever?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
just
awesome.
did that today.
When you
Oh,
just
we
when
know.
you bring up Clever and you log in like you log into Google, I'm pretty sure I just have it saved my
I
login.
just realized I can pull it up.
So
Then
then
log in as yourself, not
Yeah.
as your,
Okay.
No, just as me.
TLI Win 7 Learning.
So then when Clever comes up, you have all these fun tools available to you, but as you scroll down, you'll say library resource, and that's your PAC. And so it's a really fast way to teach teachers how to access.
Yeah, but I don't wanna
Slight problem, and two-factor on my email, and I'm recording on my phone.
What?
Oh wait, they have my watch.
They don't know my password, so they can't get into my email. Like my pack, the one pack that I use all the time, it doubles as the pack and my screen. I just log on.
As your son.
I just don't go into email. They don't know my password. They can't get
Well,
anywhere.
my password's the same
Yeah.
login as it is.
Yeah, but they can't get into Gmail. If you don't sign into Chrome, if you don't sign in, they can't get into your email. Like if you're not in.
Right, because it's a different, I see what you're saying.
I didn't
No,
check.
but if they
You
go
just, all
on
you have to
anything
do is
inappropriate,
click
then
and
they'll know.
you're on.
You're not in your email. They have
Yeah,
to
but-
enter your
Yeah, but
password.
if-
Chrome, if I
Kids
click on
can access
Chrome, my
Clever from
email is
Chrome
there.
here.
Yeah, the
They
kids
use
all
it
have
in their
that.
classrooms.
Yeah, they can go to home.
Yeah,
Because
but they
all
can-
those my pet computers I click in is Eli Win,
I mean,
and
you send
a
it
very general login.
That's what our.
Mine
That's
is
how they access. Again, I've got a library page is saved up.
Yes.
Right.
I
and
don't
that's
know
fine.
where she went.
It's like, hey,
Well, it's in the sandbox too.
this is awesome. Okay, so when I am teaching the kids the different like databases or just even how to look for a book, on my whiteboard with a ceiling projector, all of this is very small. So I will teach them, you can search by title, author, but that's very small for someone in the back of the room. So if I,
That was one thing I hadn't gotten to yet, actually, in
Yeah.
Chrome. You can pinch to zoom on most websites.
Right.
Go ahead and do that. 2 fingers, just pinch and zoom.
Holy
Oh,
smokes.
It's a little-
See it?
It's a little aggressive sometimes, so.
Wow.
You know what? Here, open up the touchpad in the lower right of your screen. Yep. Try and do a pinch to zoom on that. So move the cursor just by sliding your finger over the black box. That's your cursor. Go ahead and do a pinch to zoom with your hand there.
Okay.
Try and do it outside of the menu box. I don't think it lets you do it in there.
Oh, that's what I wanted them to see bigger.
Oh, that's fine. It'll still blow up if you
Oh,
do it
okay.
inside.
I bet it went away.
You can scroll back up.
I'm not used to using this technology.
Okay, how many of you know how to do a 2-finger scroll?
So it's like a Mac, right? Where you
Make
like
a
a
peace
trackpad
sign and
on a
drag
Mac.
up.
Okay,
Oh.
so it's like a Mac.
A
Yeah.
little bit.
Sort
I mean,
of.
every touchpad does that. So if you're using your laptop, 2-finger scroll should work. If it doesn't, tell your tech to take a look at your computer. You're missing a driver.
All right. Anyway, I thought that's
Be fun to record it.
yeah, and that way I wouldn't have to do it over
Yeah.
and
class
over
every-
again. I
Okay,
could
I'm gonna
just-
put you on the spot. Do you remember how to move the touchpad interface? Correct. Go ahead and get that out of your way. Let's clear our screen of all these stamps and writings. Perfect. All right. Yeah, actually, we can go ahead and just start recording if you like, or if you want, you can draw on top of the screen.
I was trying to find the spotlight.
Oh, okay. That's in the toolbox under the cursor. It looks like a lunch pail almost. Hey, that's the magnifying glass. There we go.
So first of all, I would tell them, and then I can make that bigger, that that's what they're looking for. Where it says all fields. So I teach them how to log in and put something on hold. So all of these things that would make it bigger. So you could go through all the ways to search. This would be quite a long little process of recording, but let's just say my first step was you're going to look for this button that says all fields. I don't even know if that's really practical because now that you showed me how I can.
Zoom. I wouldn't even bother,
I
at least
wouldn't
not
bother
inside of
with
Chrome.
that.
I would use this as a last resort to zoom.
Yeah.
Generally, a website you can do a pinch to zoom on.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and close this. Sorry, tap somewhere farther on the left side of the screen, and then click the X that's floating next to the bubble. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
You can close that other menu too. I'm making you be the teacher now.
Fine. Good practice.
There we go.
Okay. So there's lots of things that this is going to make much more, like when I'm trying to teach them series and sequels, we can, this is just my picture for that, and they can look, access all of our databases.
So how did you get into Clever? Because I feel like some of us tried to get into Clever and we couldn't.
We actually didn't, because I'm a staff member and I'm not assigned to a school, so I don't have a Clever page to go to, so we just got the link for her pack computers.
So at the beginning of the year, though, there was a message from IS or somebody that instructed us on how to log in, to make our own login for Clever. Maybe if you do a search in your email,
That'd be a good way to do it.
just search for Clever and see what comes up.
We really actually only need this URL at the top to do that, and I have you know
Yeah, I
what?
just get it through my Zenbox.
Yeah, and you can copy and paste that URL. Yeah. Clever is not required.
I mean, I get into my pack.
But when I don't want to do that. When I do this,
to switch back to cursor.
thank you. So at the beginning of school, when I do this with 3rd through 6th, and I'm teaching them about research, you know, and you say all of this is grade level. You can search anything on the internet, but that doesn't mean it's for kids. It could be for grown-ups. And so when we search for things for kids, it's age appropriate, and they search for what they want to. Teachers go, oh, can I use this in my classroom?
Come on, they don't know about it?
Sometimes they don't.
They're the
I
ones
didn't
teaching
know about it.
research.
Is this automatic? Because this is not on my,
You have to.
No, you
You
have
have
to.
put it on.
We added that to our.
Alright, somebody write this down.
We-
Info bits? Somebody write that
Info
down.
Info bits.
Yeah, the district pays to subscribe
And
to
she
it.
had it linked on her pack page.
I made
Oh.
it.
I give it to the
Let me
teachers
just
when they
tell
want to go and
I
do
didn't know
stuff.
this.
Because I've had them come in and use it, and then I've given them the website, but not everyone does.
So-
And that will translate too. It has a translator on it into Spanish, some of the articles, so it's really great for dual language.
Yes.
Because I told them about it.
Do I need a certain site to get into that? To add it to my
Yeah, to
OPAC?
personalize your OPAC page, you have a special login.
But for this particular,
For info bits.
and for
I
info
think it's
bits,
through the district.
so I need my tech to put it on there.
I don't
Maybe
think
not.
the tech will.
I
Do you know how to update your website?
I don't know if you
Yeah.
know,
Your pack page?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything.
Huh?
Yep.
You just need
Lloyd
the
Lowry.
You need that. You just
Yeah.
need that.
So this is big, you know, at the beginning of the year, and we'll refer back to this. But when I'm teaching kids now, if I had this in my library,
2 fingers.
Hold on. Don't go away. Mary's trying to take a picture.
Yeah, there's.
So I can get this URL.
Oh, we can email it to you.
Can you email it to me? That would be awesome.
What's your email?
Mary Polinsky, PEL. I am there.
Info bits link you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh.
I think we just took a picture of the icon, like, cause mine's not where it's mine, I just on the icon.
But it might, no, it,
The one
it's not on the.
Britannica?
Is it on the side?
No, I don't think so.
No, right.
You want me to email it to you too?
No, I have it on my.
Could you send it to me?
Yeah.
Please.
I know, well, we don't get the same training every year.
And Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
so I do have teachers now, after so many years of repeating these lessons, that are getting more brave to
They do it
explore them,
themselves.
and so they're using
They're really
info bits for
doing
them.
it.
Because I really
Like the fifth and sixth grade teachers. how
So
to
the
teach
other thing
kids how to
Do you want to practice recording? Or go ahead and start your other thing, because you're giving me ideas to show other people too.
Oh, okay. Well, the
Thank you
other
for
thing is
assisting.
pretty simple.
That's cool.
If I had this by my story area, we're reading a book, and I would want to show the kids. Okay, hold on.
Ooh, something to note, I forgot to mention this when we're typing with the keyboard. When you want to type somewhere with the keyboard, you want to tap in whatever area you want the letters to go first. So she knew to do that, but you can't just start typing, it won't know where you want the letters to go by default. So if you want it in the URL bar, tap the URL bar and then start typing.
Because you're directing it, essentially.
So now it's typing there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then tap.
Oh, I'm not spelling it right. Okay.
And,
festival. I wanted to show the kids, and
It's
I
a
didn't spell it right.
autocorrect is good enough to get it done.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, while she's getting it up, how many of you guys are doing read-alongs with your kids right now? Yeah, read out loud. Sorry. One thing I thought of last night for your visual learners. I know PowerPoints are pretty antiquated, but for those of you who have kids who are visual learners and have trouble paying attention and just reading or occasionally showing them books if it's a picture book, try and find the characters in Google Image and put them in a PowerPoint, and you might even be able to create a little action slide for them to pay attention to while you go along.
That's good.
Just a thought.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to use visual reading. I've seen different things about that. Like if there's somebody like reading it, to just put it on. Because I've heard that there's problems with that. And then the people that are being copied are getting mad, and there's like a whole bunch of junk. So yeah, just like in the last couple of weeks.
From
I'm just saying, the characters on just like
Yeah,
search
if
screen.
yeah. Google Image search, throw in a
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
I just Storybook Online I've used. and
Yeah, but there's like other ones where you know you can probably pull it up on YouTube.
I assume I that's a Sagamore thing. I'm sure they've gotten the author's permission to read the stories. There's no way they do it.
Right, but there were a couple just recently, and I'm like, okay, I was gonna do it. I'm like,
I would say ask Celia. I'm gonna go under the assumption you
No one's
can.
gonna tattle on you.
Yeah, I doubt they would.
my luck.
Your
I'd
first
be the
graders.
one.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
be the one that would be
yeah.
like all the time. That's-
Anyway, I've just been reading this all week, the mooncake book, and I would show them actual pictures of mooncakes to see if there was a video. The other thing, did we talk about Epic? Using Epic?
I use it.
Like, it would be cool on this.
Yeah.
You want to pull it up?
What is
It's
Epic?
different for every school because my screen image is too close to my kids.
What is
Oh,
Epic?
They're like
Yeah. You have to create a subscription, but it's
I
free.
do. I would know my login. I keep all that at work. But you could create, it's free, and you create your own login, and then the kids can read a book, have one read to them. It reads it to them, and it highlights the words as they're reading. So
Oh, that would be much better for the visual kids.
It's like story time.
it's like it's story time instead of you doing it.
Yeah. No, but Storyline Online. It's
So I haven't used that.
that's
Yeah.
cute.
But it's
Cute.
there's more.
They animate the. Yeah, they don't have as many books on Storyline Online, but
Right.
famous actors
famous-
are reading the book, but they've also animated the book
Oh.
as they read it.
Oh,
Which is
so
that's
cool.
cool.
So with Epic is literally just stories in different books.
Yeah.
You
They
can-
have Spanish books too.
and you will use the smartboard versus reading it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because they're
Nice.
diary books.
Pardon the interruption. Teachers, if you want a slice of cake before you head home, we got some left in the office.
Let's go. Not
Do you
all.
still have your 2:30 you have to take care of?
You know what, actually, I talked to them, they're coming in at 3:00, so we
Oh,
have
perfect.
Yeah.
All right, we still have a half an hour if you guys want to play that.
So can you create Jeopardy and stuff like that?
Yeah,
So
we did
Storyline Online is one thing, one of them. Epic
So
is
what, like
another.
for Monarch voting at the end of the
Tumble
year?
books. Tumble books.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the one
Yeah.
I'm getting it mixed up.
And
Maybe
you
that's the
know,
one.
so like I just used Tumble Books on here today and the kids love it.
Tumble books. I think I'm
So
getting
you
it.
do,
mixed up.
and you
One
pulled up
in a
Tumble books,
group.
and you just had that?
Yeah, Tumble Books is
That's
where
a-
I sent
Oh,
it.
that I do know,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, there's
Right
That I do know.
But we had to add
That
that
might be the one.
to our page.
Yeah, we did, anything on our pages.
And Britannica.
The Tumble
Britannica
Books is
and
probably in ZenWorks. In the ZenWorks.
It is.
It is for a lot of you. I don't know if it's there for all of you. If it's not, they'll make a ticket for your tech. They'll escalate it to their level 2 and then add it.
Yeah.
But like Epic and Storyline, if I would like those, I don't need to have the text do that. I can go and do that myself.
Through your pack page, yeah.
Okay.
This is Knock Knock, do you know that poetry?
Oh.
It's,
Who's there?
Yeah.
what's that?
Who's there?
It's
No. Yes.
Little Boys,
I
yeah.
thought.
So I think David Bailey is the author's name. He does it on YouTube. Oh, I just thought it was phenomenal to hold it. And that would be a sixth grader thing because his dad was put in jail.
Yeah,
And he always counted on his dad was going to show him
to
everything.
do things.
Yeah, how to do
Yeah.
And he's not there.
Yeah, how to share it and all that. Oh, he does this.
Yeah.
Well,
Fill that up. That's very.
Well, it's You're not 100% sure what happened to his dad.
He's
Yeah.
Assume.
Yeah, you assume.
So
they
they
go
go
visit-
visit,
they
they go visit.
They go visit him, okay.
A lot of season in our house.
That's true.
What is it? Not.
This one with the bear, the third one down.
Oh,
No, the one right above it is.
Oh, the one right above
Where
it.
he's, yeah, he's
Oh.
on his dad's shoulders.
one complaint we have gotten from some of the bigger or louder libraries, the speakers aren't quite loud enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
How do
we're gonna,
we fix that? Can you put a speaker?
you can't actually add a speaker to this setup. I think there actually isn't, well, you're
Yeah,
probably gonna have to
I
order you
noticed
guys
that.
some.
Because I had an author send us a video and she wasn't really close to the microphone and it was not loud at all.
Tommy, can you make a note about talking about that at the next one-to-one meeting where with Celia? Because there is an audio aux out on this thing, and we could probably get a speaker that mounts on the back.
Yeah, we found with that, we found with that, was a issue.
Yeah, even though you have them both up at 100%, it's still low.
Yeah, I kind of found that too, even today for my NLP class.
On a side note, those are some really silly shots.
I thought it was my hearing, but
And
Mine-
and it
I've
was
seen-
fine
Is there a
today,
port
but
here for
there's
speakers
like
to plug into?
there was
You
like.
have
Yeah.
to actually test it, but yeah, there is a spot to
That where
have
they go
audio
to
come
die.
out and then send a speaker.
so you would
Dress
just
Lily
attach a
Bunnies.
speaker back
Because I
there?
have
There's a cable for it.
Cable.
Dress Lily.
Oh, I just realized our Elgato doesn't support audio pass-through on the HDMI.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big deal for them, it's just, well, I can't play the video for them.
Yeah,
Well, here's what's
I have a
fun.
question on the Epic. How do you utilize that? As a
I haven't
group or
yet,
just-
But if I had a big board like this, it would just be fun for them to see, and some books, the visuals are so great, you really want them to see it big and be fun for them to, even if I read it while the pictures were going through on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they could read along.
Right.
No, why do you have login with Google if you can't log out with it?
They can work all
But at the end of the year,
boring
before we do
and
monarch
weird stuff.
voting and blue stem and all that, it's fun to play games to jog their memory. So you could use this screen if it's interactive, the kid could say, I want whatever for 200 and.
Oh, actually, yeah, we did that at the honor
Somebody made
I still Jeopardy.
I saw the Jeopardy board from,
For Jeopardy.
My mother-in-law and she
Do
was Jeopardy.
Almost like it doesn't
you guys want a PowerPoint that has a Jeopardy board in it?
That would be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so awesome.
We actually used that at our Explorer event.
That would be
So
super
I'll
fun.
warn you, it's completely computer themed, so.
But it's editable, right?
Is it
Yeah, yeah, you can edit it.
Yeah,
It's
you
just-
can edit and just.
I thought
Yeah.
even like for, you know, library vocabulary, call number,
Yeah.
like, you know, all the different things we're trying to teach them, what is a, you know,
Yeah.
somehow, something creative.
I showed them.
You're the queen of creativity. One of my students is coming to you on Monday.
It was
Oh,
One of my
yeah.
students,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
she's very, I told her that you're awesome, and
I
I said she
haven't
will
done
you.
the Jeopardy, no.
And the teacher said she's leaving in Selma. Her name is Alpha.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So do you create your own?
It would be fun, like,
or is it out there?
Who writes the book, what is an author? Who creates a picture, that'd be like fun.
That would be fun.
Jeopardy stuff.
Because the kids wanted to do this.
Let me know when you send it.
Anybody else have it?
They wanted to send it.
Other than a really pricey
You
display
should
board.
send it to Corey. Send it to Corey.
It might actually be the same one just before we need it.
Yeah.
That's
I
just.
think it's
I said, you don't need that. I said, you guys just need to get content.
That's what-
Because I
I
wanted-
already have some of their emails in an email. Oh, it's a Google Doc.
It was like these quizzes or something. But I wasn't sure.
You
if that
send it
would
to
be
one of
the
us.
answer.
Yeah.
We have
send
a-
it to me.
Yeah, and then we can just mass
Yeah.
produce it.
I was gonna say, make sure it's a copy, otherwise you're all gonna be overwriting each other.
Oh, right.
Because we're just gonna share it.
Well, that's why I shared
You know what, it was Mandy
Uh,
Hansen, you guys. I want Mandy to do
training with us at it.
Excellent. Thank you, Tommy.
What were you saying about be careful about sharing?
I was wrong the way he shared it with everybody. It won't matter.
Oh.
Then who else wants to be on this? I got the first three.
Just one
The
for
Jeopardy
his
board.
info.
Yes, go.
Mine,
Yeah.
Cheryl
Oh,
Rivera.
thank you.
How are you supposed to share?
Cheryl Rivera.
I've seen some crazy spelling.
Kim Jones.
Mary.
M-R-A-M-A-R-Y.
M-A-R-Y-K-E.
Here I am.
Yep.
That's me.
I'm learning names while I do
And then Kim.
Kim Jones.
Arvana
J-O-N-E-S.
White. Arvana White.
Yes,
Anyone else want to do it?
Karen.
Somebody else could have a turn.
I'm sorry, Karen, what? Oh, we. Oh, I see.
Heather Fagan.
Oh, I'll send it to
That's
you
all right.
later.
They'll send it to me. You guys will just send it to everybody, right?
We always share. We always share.
We share.
I'm gonna add Heather just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
It's Fagan.
Oh, Fagan.
You're right, yeah. That's me.
I was like, who spells Heather with an F? Oh, I didn't include the link, of course.
Oh, that's all right. You were just practicing.
Now you
Yeah,
get
you
to
guys are
send
gonna have like
it.
9 emails from me now.
That's okay.
Alright, anything you guys want to cover with our last 20 minutes? Or if you want to come up and just practice or play?
I guess, what are some other examples that we could use, how we can use this really with our library? Brainstorm my with other areas.
Yeah, I'm still learning that myself.
So-
I had gotten used to teachers, and then
Yeah.
Celia asked us to do this, and you guys are a completely different demographic.
I've shown my Scholastic author video.
Okay. You have.
Yeah, they send you.
Yeah, you know what, I used it
Yeah.
for our book fair too, I used
So
it.
You
shows
could
your
also
brother
set
and
it-
send it
this
to you.
time.
I was so hoping it
Not
would
the-
give us
This.
This.
Would this
Oh, you have
replace
to get
an
the link.
Elmo? So it's
Okay.
not really.
No, you can still use your Elmo with
Can I
this,
still use
actually.
my Elmo with it?
You
Okay.
could actually have the Elmo hooked up to the computer right now, and then have a child annotating it
Oh.
there.
Okay.
Or you drawing it there. But one other thing that you could potentially do, you could quiz the kids on how well they're paying attention to your book. Aside from a general book quiz, find a picture of the characters from your book without showing them what they look like beforehand, and see if they can figure out which ones are which, and maybe have them annotate the descriptive features from their book and see who points their attention, or have them do it. Have, you know what, when a character gets introduced, have pictures of them in advance, hold them up, and have the kids circle the features that the authors are describing about their physical appearance, for example. That'll definitely keep some of your kinesthetic learners entertained.
I did one week I did Tucky Joe and Little Heart, which is book set in the Vietnam War. And then I did this past week the Candy Bomber, which is World War II, where they send instead
You
of
have
sending.
some dark subjects.
No, actually not. The kids really got into it. They really, but then I did similarities, and because I have a longer time period with these kids and they're older, and we talked about similarities. Like, well, Tucky Joe did this with his village, and he was known as the guy that made it rain fish. I go, who was Mr. Halverson? What was he known as? And they were like, oh, he was the guy that jumped the candy. You know, and I said, well, how are they different? And I said, well, this was like one time in history, and this was something else. And then I go, I said, well, where did they get their ideas to write the book? And then somebody chimed in with something. Somebody chimed in with something else. And then it got some kids that don't usually participate, they really got into it. And those are the cool things that are good to see.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, this is good.
It's a little off topic, but our
Yeah, I do.
So before you guys got here, when I was talking with Corey, I had asked him about possibly getting an Elmo to hook up to my laptop. And here's why. Because some of our STEM things, to me, it's hard to show everyone how to use something at the same time. But to have it under the umbrella. So for instance, like I would really, really like to start including like Yahtzee, a Yahtzee game in our STEM stuff. That is math and logic. But to try and explain the whole class all at one time, rolling dice, with the Yahtzee score.
And they'll come up right on that.
How many of you guys have an Elmo right now?
I do, but I use an iPad camera as the iPad on the stand
Oh,
as
okay.
the camera part, and then I could just manipulate the. Have you seen teachers that have the stand?
Say, Tommy, can we make another note when we see Celia to maybe bring up documents?
There's a stand that you should put an iPad in, and then it's elevated, so whenever.
I mean, you guys should definitely ask for them, but they're not that
And you can
expensive.
see what they call
They're Elmos.
The Elmo is a name brand like Kleenex versus tissue. The ones we're getting, we don't get the Elmo ones anymore because they're like Apple products are like 5 times the price of something else that does the same thing. We get the IPEVO ones and they're actually a little bit nicer, even though they cost a bit less because you can zoom in super far on an object with those. So it's a lot of fun to get like a macro shot of a very, very tiny object that you couldn't show to the whole class, for example.
Like a dice.
Yeah, like a dice.
See, I wanted to play Yahtzee, but I was afraid they were dice. Do you know off the top of your head? Because I would purchase a old Elmo because I didn't have anything.
You could probably still use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually use another piece of software by IPEVO called the Visualizer. This is going to be a little ghetto, but we'll do it anyway. We're using a tablet with a front-facing camera, so bear with me here.
Can you hook up an iPad to this?
I can't think of a very easy way to do it. Yeah, you need a bunch of adapters, which defeats the purpose of being wireless.
Well, I'm just thinking of using it as a camera.
You know what I'm reading upside down?
Tommy, you remember the focus button is on here?
Sixth grade right now. And it's so powerful. And I keep wanting to pull up things about Hurricane Katrina and just.
Thanks.
I did use it before.
Yeah, same here.
But not nearly as.
Why is there even a focus button? It's just autofocus.
Here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looked like after the levees broke, here's what it looks like now. And just really powerful.
Might just not play music. Okay, but you guys get the gist of it. You could actually do this with any webcam technically, just not mine apparently. But yes, you actually could present it up here, and then while it's up here, you can interact with it both physically while someone else is writing on the board, for example, and annotate on top of it. So you're not limited to just one thing or the other.
Yeah.
And since you have like a wireless connection to the board, you can actually just take your computer with either the IPEVO or Elmo or some other device and take it to the students. So if you want to show off what one kids are doing in part of the room so everyone else can see, you don't have to make them move and bring it to you. Just I can't use it. I can't use my tablet very well for this, unfortunately. This out of the way. And we are about out of time. Any last minute questions before we start cleaning up after ourselves?
So you're going to use this as a recording refresher now instead of a live meeting, so this is Heather's second time around, and I see why you might need 2 exposures to it to retain it. So you're going to make this video.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a while to edit through because we've been going at this for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So we'll probably try to condense it in a video. You guys can just pause and go back.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing we're going to probably do something like picture in picture where we'll flip between them. So when I'm doing things explicitly on the screen, I'm just promising more things for Tommy to do. I'm sorry.
You just gave him a month's worth of work. And can you be hooked up to your desktop as well?
I'm sorry, what?
The interactive board?
Can you what?
Desktop?
Yes.
What about your desktop?
Could it be?
Oh, yeah.
See, mine says no.
Mine is. My text sign.
I mean, the computer saying not compatible or something.
Oh, use
To
it
your
with
desktop?
your desktop. I'm sorry.
With your desktop.
By desktop, I thought you meant the desktop
No, no,
of
no,
the
no, no.
computer.
Like your desktop,
No.
because mine
Not
is like
wireless.
right there. I mean, the laptop's just as easy, but
You could, in theory, have wires ran to it, but
oh,
our
no, I don't
director
want
would
that.
not
They
be.
should have 56 so in theory they should be able to.
See, I don't have that.
In,
I have an older one.
oh, okay, that would be why.
That's why.
You should be using it.
Yeah, I heard about
I
that.
heard about it too and I haven't got one. My wireless.
This has been great.
But this is
I
awesome.
think this small group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. Hey, great, so once the video of your.
Oh, that's silly.
is done,
Yeah.
make it, okay, sure, awesome.
Okay.
It's not everybody will do it.
Fabulous. Thank you guys. Just having that to go back to.
Oh, yes.
You know,
It's a lot easier
6
when
months
you
from
can
now, we'll be like,
pause.
oh, wait a minute, we don't want to do that tomorrow.
I think we're good, Tommy.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very